They stood for centuries, dominating the northern landscape. But these towering giants were no match for the men with the crosscuts. Along Marble Creek, a tributary of the St. Joe River, the best loggers in the world rolled the round stuff. And no one worked harder under more dangerous conditions. Death was a common occurrence, and ingenuity was a logger's best friend. Crosscuts and axes brought the giants down. The hard part was getting them to the mill. Loggers used horses and oxen, hand-hewn chutes greased with animal fat, and water-filled flumes. Whatever it took to get the timber to the creeks. Log decks stayed in the creeks until crews could manipulate the spring rains and the snowmelt. A series of splash dams would hold the water, then release it in timed sequence until millions of board feet of logs floated to the St. Joe River. The steep terrain of this country limited logging by train, but a transcontinental railroad did reach the St. Joe in 1909 after tunneling almost 2 miles through solid mountain. 1 year later, the coal-fired train spewed sparks through a dangerously dry forest. The newly constructed railway helped cause the Great Idaho Fire of 1910.
Right over here we have an Idaho white pine, which this was the most desirable species in the whole area, and what the original loggers came in here after.
Someone who has seen changes in the woods is Rodney Wolf. He started logging the St. Joe country in 1938, when there were still massive white pine trees to be cut, before blister rust, over-harvest, and fire had decimated Idaho's state tree. Wolf was the first logger in the area to use a one-man chainsaw, but he really preferred the crosscut.
I like the age where it was crosscut and the jammers the best, and short logs. That to me was the real logging. When they hit the ground, it's beyond imagination when one of them, a tree 4 or 5 feet through a big white pine, had hit the ground, that steep ground, and it hit, and it'd roll. It had to be real skillful, a sawing, and it was a death trap all the time. You always figure on getting hurt good at least once a year, and probably get hurt a little bit every day. In the head of Bond Creek, I cut white pine. I forget the exact dimension. I know it had, when he scaled the logs up, when we cut it, it had 9,800 feet. And a week later in a tavern in there, it had 13,000 feet. And so it still was growing, even after we had her cut. When I started out in the woods, I was 13. And if you even scarred a tree, you had to pay triple stumpage on it. You just logged what they had marked, and you did a good job, and it was all 16 foot. It looked like a park when you got done. The last year I worked in the woods was 69. And you'd get a bunch of dead weight, and everybody got paid about the same. You got paid a little extra for your chainsaw. You got paid by the amount of timber. It was volume logging. They tried to get all the timber off of that piece of land that they could. You just destroyed the country. It was just a different game altogether.
Rodney Wolf saves his admiration for the jacks who worked the log drives.
But I never did get in on any of the great big log drives, although I seen the one on the Clearwater River. You can't believe the work that the men did on there, and they were soaking wet all day. I always had to work hard, but nothing like those guys did. They worked like animals.
These days, Rodney Wolf devotes his time to less arduous pursuits. But always he remains close to the river that helped raise him, the river that still draws him.
As far as I'm concerned, this St. Joe River, the good Lord built it for heaven to start with, and then he found a better place somewhere.